Okay, good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. We're going to do a quick overview of Hudson River Computing and Acumatica. Hopefully we can give you a good introduction so you get kind of an idea what the product is, as well as what Hudson River services and what we can provide for you. So let's get started. I'm going to just hide my photo here so that there's no need to see me the whole time. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about who Hudson River is. We're going to go back through and give an overview of Acumatica, who Acumatica is, as well as what the typical benefits are for Acumatica are, as well as kind of a quick demonstration for about 15 minutes or so of the product. So we're not going to really cover in depth of the product, but the idea is that we want to do this as an introduction. So if we go a bit further, Hudson River Computing, we've been doing this for a little while. We were officially formed in 1993. We initially focused strictly on accounting systems. Back then they were accounting systems only. It was kind of like AREPGL, maybe some inventory here and there, but that it kind of expanded during the 90s and onward into other pieces, okay? At that point in time, we carried products called Platinum back in the day, Solomon 4 or Solomon 3 at that point, and then also Great Plains software. A little bit later on, we started to carry other products, and we kind of changed our product line around. So for example, as time went on with Great Plains software, we picked up Microsoft, or actually it was called Dynamics at the time. And then we, as that was bought by Microsoft, we kind of continued with that product, and we still are actually a Microsoft Dynamics GP reseller, which is kind of the end result of that piece as it went on. Additionally, some of the other products have come and went that we've kind of worked with. We worked with ACPAC for a while, worked with Navision for a while, Solomon 4, etc. So we've worked for a variety of products. Our staff has had experience with a lot of different products, okay, as well as in-depth experience with implementing and supporting the systems. And that sounds like a minor detail, but it's really kind of important because sometimes it's not only what system you use, but how it's implemented. And that becomes very important to have that experience that you have for the implementation. Additionally, as you go on, we have programming staff and integration services on staff, as well as migration services. So those are all kind of important. We have control over those pieces, and we are able to do those things with the experience we have fairly easily usually. Okay, we're committed to quality products. We pick our products very carefully. We actually picked Acumatica back in 2015 as a product that we wanted to add on. We wanted to look into getting into the cloud environment with ERP. And at that time, we actually started the search back in 2012. And so to give you an idea, we took that decision process very seriously. We went through a lot of different criteria. And the bottom line is the basis of what we offer is based upon our experiences and those past experiences, as well as where we wanted to go in the future and what we thought would most likely help our clients the most in prospects. So the idea is trying to get there. So we're not huge. We don't have 400 people, but we're big enough to take on implementations fairly well. And typically with that experience and those pieces and being able to actually start from different areas, we have different ways to kind of do those. We actually still are able to very easily offer personalized service, so we know your client, we know the clients very well. And that's important for us to know the business to make the proper recommendations. Okay, so currently I mentioned we carry Microsoft Dynamics GP. We also carry Acumatica while we're here today. And we're going to concentrate on the Acumatica piece today. The Dynamics GP piece is kind of in its twilight zone, so to speak. It's kind of fading away. Microsoft is reducing support for the product over time, etc. So the idea is we're actually concentrating on the Acumatica product line. We've looked at a lot of other products, and we've decided that in the cloud product arena, this will work the best for us and our clients. So who is Acumatica? Okay, they're a worldwide organization. Okay, they actually have quite a few employees around the world in different areas. So their global headquarters is out in Washington. And so, halfway between Redmond and Bellevue, because the bottom line is they actually have that requirement. They actually are hosted on AWS, Amazon, which is near their headquarters. And then they actually use a lot of Microsoft technologies. Again, the Microsoft technology, their headquarters is very close by. So it's those kind of things that help with getting things resolved, being able to, know what's going on a little bit better. So it all kind of helps. Beyond that, they have offices around North America. So they have an office in Toronto, Montreal, Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, sorry. They have down in Virginia, et cetera. So they have quite a few offices around the country within North America. They also have offices in other countries. So if you notice, they have one regional headquarters down in South America. They have another one in Asia, et cetera, as you go through. So in Europe. So the idea of it is they have these pieces out there. You also see some other brand names out there, like Visma, MYOB, Lexware, and those are also ERP products that are based on Acumatica's core technologies, or actually even core product in some instances, okay? And then it's relabeled or it's tailored to that particular country and or special offering that they have. So the idea of it is, it's got quite a few installations around the world as we go through, okay? So if we go through and we look, what's important about Acumatica? Well, one of the things that's important is one of the easiest ERP systems to use. All right, sounds like a minor detail until you're trying to train your employees to be able to use the system on a day-to-day basis. And we'll show you a little bit of that as we go through, but you can see here it's kind of ranked with quite a few different other pieces, all right? And that's consistent. That's not a one-time survey. That's kind of a consistent, even in 2022, 21, 19, it was ranked as easy to use. The other part is the product, people actually use, the users actually really like the product and the company. That sounds like a minor detail, okay? But the bottom line is part of the reason that's true is because Acumatica helps customers, not only on a day-to-day, but they're available to talk to the customers as needed. So there's times where you look at scenarios where maybe we're trying to resolve an issue, or maybe you want to make a suggestion to the product, okay? If you go to like Acumatica Summit, for example, the people that actually work at Acumatica from the top down, you'll see them out and amongst the people. It's not like they hide behind everything. So the idea is that really has a very positive effect on everything. So they really do try to work on it and try to solve various pieces that might come up, or even take suggestions. And that's the way they get some of their information back. So if you notice here, again, very positive feedback from the organization standpoint. Additionally, Acumatica has really high satisfaction rates in general. Meaning if you take a look at it as an industry average, people are happy with the product, and not only are they happy with the product, but Acumatica is kind of leading that. So it's kind of important as you kind of go through, as you're looking at products, what does that entail, okay? Their little icon here, so sorry, I forgot. I always forget that slide, how it works. Acumatica has also won quite a few awards over time and continually. So PC Editor's Choice Awards, the Cody Awards, those have been won very consistently over time, okay, over a number of years. And when I say like the Cody Awards, I know it goes back to at least 2015. And they've been a winner of that virtually every year. Okay, with Gartner and G2, depending on the surveys and whatever, they rank near the top or at the top. So it depends upon the particular survey and what it's regarding. So for example, it could be usability, could be support, could be various areas. They rank near the top in all those categories. But the idea of it is, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose by a little bit based on timing and who Gartner and G2 are speaking with, right, to get the information. But the idea is they always rank near the top. Okay, so what makes Acumatica different? One is the technology and the way it's built. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. Also, what about functionality? It's great to have great technology, but if the functionality or most of the core of the functionality isn't there, it doesn't help you very much, right? So the bottom line is if you have to do a whole bunch of add-ons or a whole bunch of customization, just for core functionality, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So functionality is very important. And then you have ethical business practices. And that sounds like a minor detail unless you've been through a company, working with a company that doesn't have the ethical business practices. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because Acumatica has its Bill of Rights and things like that, and we'll kind of describe that in a little bit more detail. So if we go a little bit further, we'll talk about the technology. And we'll keep this simple. So we have basically, if you go from the bottom up, okay, so if we look at the very bottom, we have the tech stack. So what technology is the product based upon? And if you notice, it's, AWS, Azure, Visual Studio, C#, HTML5. You go across further, different versions of SQL or database providers are available. Okay. Now, with that, because of the way the tech stack works, each one of these little blocks can be substituted out. So, for example, okay, normally with Acumatica, if it's hosted by them, it'll be done by AWS and it'll be on SQL Server. Okay. If, on the other hand, you decide that for some reason, okay, you want to host it internally, which can be done. Talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But if you decide to say, you know what, I want to do it, but you know what, I want to use AWS Aurora. Okay. Because of the way it's set up in blocks, all you have to do is say, okay, when they did the code for this, they could easily add the AWS Aurora support, which was done in the last year or two, okay, for Acumatica. And they were able to do that fairly easily because it's just got the hooks in it and the block just comes out and the new block goes in for that support, okay, or it's added, depending on the scenario. But the idea of it is it's relatively seamless and easy from an end user standpoint. When HTML5 came out several years ago at this point, okay, it was a scenario where they took out that block, they replaced that particular area with HTML5. And they didn't have to rewrite the whole code. They had to just replace that one piece of it. So that's kind of the importance of it. As you go up a step, okay, and you get into the cloud platform itself, all right, these little pieces of this remain the same regardless of what your tech stack is below. If you pick a different database, doesn't matter. If you pick, doing Azure versus AWS, which is the norm, again, doesn't matter. So the bottom line is, as you go through, none of this has to be rewritten for any of these pieces that are changed. So if they decide, you know what, we're going to replace our reporting engine, right? Reporting and analysis engine. And I'm not saying they're doing that. I'm saying suppose they did. What would happen is that comes out, they put the new one in, and it's all, they don't have to rewrite the rest of the code. The hooks are there. Okay, same thing for mobile, et cetera, as you go through. So the idea of it is it keeps it very easily maintained and update the technology as required or as needed as it occurs. And that's going to enable them to build things down the road, for example, for AI, improve the technology, could be a whole bunch of different things as we go down through. We don't know all of it yet because it's to come, right? Even if we read the trade pubs and say, okay, there's new technology coming, it doesn't always get here, okay? Or it fails, right? So the idea of it is if it does or doesn't, if it becomes a new technology people want to implement, then they can implement it. So it's one of those things they go through it. If we go up the next layer, we have basically the actual ERP itself that's built on everything below. So as we go through, you have the financial management, which includes AR, AP, general ledger. We'll talk in more detail about these, project accounting, et cetera, payroll and things like that. Then we have industry additions. So if you're a manufacturer versus a distributor versus a construction company, you can do that. Additionally, you can implement both. It could be a scenario where you need construction and manufacturing. For example, I used to work for a company that provided steel for commercial buildings. So we had the manufacturing part providing the steel, okay, that got sent to the site that was erected at the site, basically a construction side. So we had AII billing, which is a construction billing format for, basically percentage of completion methods. Okay, so those are the kind of pieces that are very different than, say, historical systems. So these systems interact with each other. So you can actually manufacture those pieces, add them to the project, and then bill for the project under construction. So those are the kind of things that you can actually hand off and do. So, it kind of makes a lot of sense, but you'll see it a little bit of action, not today so much, but a little bit so you get kind of an idea. And then you have at the top vertical embedded applications, right? So you have like different third parties basically that from an end user standpoint, they'll never know they're not part of the product. So for example, if you have a nonprofit and you add a nonprofit third-party product into the system, it will look just like the product. It'll integrate with the product, et cetera. And from an end user standpoint, they'll never know that it's not part of the product. And then last but not least, you have the connected applications. And there's can be different things for that. So for example, tax calculation. In the case of like sales tax, we have a client that deals with 38 states. And they actually have Avalara, which is a third-party product. All the setup actually occurs within Acumatica, but the hook goes out to find out what the tax is for that particular tax jurisdiction and then brings it back into the product and uses it. And then it writes it back to Avalara as, the billing goes out and all that so that it can be filed properly. So those are the types of things that can be done. From an end user standpoint, you'll never know the difference okay? But it's that connected application that goes out and, okay, here's what the calculation for that tax is for this item, okay? By the same token, you have things like business intelligence, like if you're using Power BI and things like that, you might be using some of those products. You know, the integration is seamless. So the idea of it is all these pieces are, because of the design of the product, are easily adjusted and replaced and updated as necessary. So it keeps the product, as they say at the very top, future-proof. So the platform is designed intentionally to be able to be updatable, to be able to keep up with technology and changes in various environments. Okay, so we'll go a little bit further. Okay, the Acumatica product is web-based, so pretty much any web device that you use. You know, there's not a lot of use perhaps on your watch, but you could perhaps, you know, have it post to you and show you a you know, cash balance or something like that, something small. The others, though, you'll notice that are fairly much fairly straightforward. So you have your desktop, you have your tablets, you have your laptops, and your phone devices. Now, if you notice, there's some slight differences in the way the screen looks, in particular between like the cell phone, okay, or the smartphone and the other devices. And part of that's just screen real estate. So they actually run the same code, but they have a slight screen design difference in some options there to help it present it. But you're actually running the same code, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, okay? And last but not least, they have over here where you can give commands and control to Alexa if you want something like that, okay? And that has to do with the technology base again. We talked about the embedded integrations. This is just a small sampling of what's available. So for example, you know, we talked about Avalara, which is tax. There's also Vertex, if you want to do tax that way. We have an integration pre-built for Salesforce, you know, Office 365, mapping, you know, various shipping softwares, credit card processing, et cetera. Those are all built into the product, okay? But the integration goes out to those pieces to pull it, okay, back and forth as necessary. So it makes it very powerful on top of that. If you're doing web sales, you have BigCommerce and Shopify basically pre-built. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean you can't control that interface. It means that you can actually adapt it to what your requirements are, okay? And a lot of it's menu driven, basically, you know, how it's set up, not even, you know, something you have to actually get into the detail of the map. Okay, so we'll go on a little bit further. This is just a small sampling of some of the third-party products that are available. My point here isn't that you're going to look and see all the little icons. The idea here is you get the idea that a lot of other third parties support into this and understand it. So everything from, you know, scanners to shipping software to DocuSign to you know, some of the construction and manufacturing pieces that, you know, are better dealt with some of the third parties. All right, some of the reporting pieces like, you know, Solver or BI 365, those types of things. So there's a whole bunch of scenarios as we go through this. Okay. Acumatica processed roughly 6.5 billion transactions last year. You know, that number is likely to have gone up, but that's kind of a prior year. All right. Modern security, important. Great to have a scenario where, hey, this software works on the web, comes from the web, I have to manage it from the web, everything works great, but you know what, if there's no security, it's kind of an issue. And one of the things I think is kind of important here, there's kind of multiple pieces of it, right? One is, okay, letting people in, you know, recognize which machines are in, which IP addresses are from, whatever happens to be, those can all be locked down. Additionally is multi-layer authentication. And last but not least, one of the things that we found is that we've actually had dynamic GP clients where their system has gone down because they actually were hit with ransomware. And we actually had an Acumatica site where it got hit with ransomware. However, that being said, Acumatica never went down. That client site, everything else was down, but they were still able to get their production out because of the web pieces. They actually brought in different things that were linked directly to the web off their network to get production done. And, you know, that's something that we couldn't do with the GP product because it was immensely reliant upon the technology and having the network there. So in this case here, as long as you had an internet connection, you could get back to running again very quickly. So, you know, kind of keep in mind that those are kind of things that are kind of important. Acumatica has different AI and machine learning built in. So for example, over time, you know, if you use the system and you're doing help searches and things like that, it automatically kind of improves upon that. If you're doing AP document scanning, it's using AI technology and machine learning to help make that a better process each time, because they have a built-in module for that. So, you can scan in a document or bring in a PDF and it'll recognize the vendor and things like that. And as time goes on, it learns more and more to be able to process those invoices more and more efficiently. Okay. So that's kind of what that kind of comes down to. And then basically intelligent advisor kind of giving information and based upon various setups within the system to help make the organization more profitable or more efficient. Industry editions, general business edition, just what it sounds like, kind of a core series of modules there. I'm going to skip over construction for a second. You have the distribution edition, which basically adds like sales orders, purchase orders, inventory management, those types of things, shipping, those kind of things get added into there. All right. You have the manufacturing edition, which builds upon the distribution edition. Most manufacturers do some sort of distribution, if nothing else, to sell their product to resellers and things like that. But the idea of it is the manufacturing edition builds upon the inventory pieces and distribution pieces to be able to build products and bills of material and things like that, routings, et cetera, that you typically take for granted in manufacturing. If we go to the construction edition, that may or may not build upon distribution manufacturing, depending upon the scenario. Okay, it depends what you do. Okay, many times the distribution edition might be involved with construction, but not always. Okay, but it can be, and if it is, it integrates. Same thing with manufacturing, it integrates. So the idea of it is the construction edition may or may not be using any of those other components, but it can be. I know it sounds confusing, okay? But the key to that is knowing that it's integrated if you do need it. And then a retail commerce edition typically builds upon the distribution and or manufacturing edition. Okay, so you're trying to sell something on the web, and in those cases there, kind of ties back and forth to inventory for, available stock, pricing. It goes back and forth to, sales orders and things like that along the way, so that you can actually, fulfill the order within Acumatica. So, and then once it's filled, it would go back and read that up to the commerce site. So that's kind of the scenario of how that would typically work. Okay. So under financial management, just kind of cover this real quick. You notice here you have like multi-currency management, ERP, tax management, which, for sales use tax type scenarios. You have deferred revenue and expense. I don't know why they call it just deferred revenue. It's an Acumatica thing. You have intercompany accounting, and that includes just, more than creating intercompany entries. It could involve creating intercompany, purchases and sales as well. Or vice versa, sales and purchasing from the other company. You have the recurring revenue and contracts piece. Fixed asset tracking is built into the system, okay, as an option. Bank feeds, meaning that if you're going to reconcile your bank statement, for example, it will actually pull the information from the banking, from your bank, and then actually automate that reconcile piece as much as it can. Again, that uses AI and machine learning. Additionally, you can actually use that in conjunction with automated expense management. So if you have automated expense management and you have quite a few employees that have corporate credit cards, that can integrate with the credit card company as well, okay, and then be able to download those transactions to help start a expense reimbursement process. And last but not least, I mentioned this before, you have AP document recognition where you can recognize it from a PDF, for example, and then, try to decipher what's in there. And again, that uses the AI and whatever, and then automatically create the accounts payable transaction. Inventory and order management. You have basically, inventory availability, inventory tracking, multiple warehouses, lot and serial number tracking. You have those types of things. You have multiple costing methods. So you have average, specific, FIFO, standard, et cetera, all very common requirements there. Automated replenishment and purchasing recommendations, so that it can actually create the purchase order based upon the recommendations within the system. It can be automated if you would like it to be. You have omni-channel order processing, flexibility with pricing and discounting that can be set up in multiple ways along the way. You have warehouse management and barcode scanning, fairly straightforward out of the box. You have drop shipments and return processing as necessary. And then you have requests for requisition. So you can actually have a request for a purchase that can go into a requisition that can become a purchase order, not through an approval process typically. Okay, customer management. Acumatica does have customer resource management. It's not as full functional as say like a full-blown Salesforce. However, keep in mind that most people don't make full use of a Salesforce type product. And what they've done here is they've kind of narrowed it down to what people really need and what they typically will end up doing in something like a Salesforce product. And the nice part about this is for lead tracking and customer information and things like that, quoting and things like that, it's done in the CRM side of module within Acumatica. The nice part about this is that it's all integrated out of the box. So basically, if you create a quote in CRM, you're tracking it, it becomes a real order. It can actually create the order on the sales order side for fulfillment. Okay. By the same token, if you set up pricing and things like that, it can be used on both sides for the customer. Okay. Field service management is an available series of modules, which basically what it comes down to is, if you do field service or you have kind of route accounting and route management that's required, that's the series that would end up happening there. So, again, it's built in and it's directly from Acumatica, which is rare. Most of these types of products end up being third parties for most ERP systems. Project accounting, again, built into the system as part of the financial series. So it can be as simple as just doing, kind of project budgeting and cost tracking, but it can also be used for other things. So, if you think about kind of what you're dealing with project costing, it can handle a wide variety of industries and requirements. All right. Now, that being said, the construction modules add on to the project accounting. So if you just have regular projects that you're tracking, maybe you're tracking the cost for, software development, for example. And if that's the case, you don't need the construction modules, but you need the core of the project accounting, perhaps. Okay, and that has billing and things too, but just not like AIA billing with retainage and things like that that you might have in construction. Okay, if we go to payroll, they have US payroll and Canadian payroll released. So the idea of it is, keep in mind that, it's a core payroll module. It is not HR, okay? But it works well if you do have to do project costing a lot of times, or construction or manufacturing sometimes, where you're trying to track those additional costs and kind of build them in. And again, it's all integrated. It's all part of the system. Okay, go a little bit further. You get the idea here. This is what's showing kind of basically the core components and or integration. So if you notice here, everything is integrated. So these are the core components, all integrated: customer management, mobile, payroll, et cetera, to go through. And this is just a general business edition. A little bit further, it's here that the distribution edition includes, the financials, the sales order management, fulfillment, inventory, et cetera, as you go down through, okay, including requisition management. So the idea of it is, it's kind of what you need to sell products if you're doing, warehousing and things like that. Okay, their warehouse management system, keep in mind, is not, it's a good starting point, but it is not necessarily an all-inclusive, all feature-rich warehouse management system. However, it works for a lot of businesses really well, again, without a lot of extra features that you may or may not use, depending on your warehouse. If we go a little bit further, you notice here, again, the distribution module is configured so it uses financial, inventory, sales, et cetera. Again, all integrated. Manufacturing edition, in addition to the distribution pieces and inventory and things like that, includes, bills of material, resource planning, material requirements planning, shop floor data collection modules, production scheduling and costing, estimating, product configurator. Those are all things that are fairly common and required out of the box for manufacturing. All right, something I will throw in here, this is what's available directly from Acumatica. There's also an excellent quality control module that is available from a third-party ISV that we've had a lot of good experiences with as well. So if you require quality management, that would be an add-on, but from an end user standpoint, you would never know it's an add-on. All right, so we go a little bit further. We have, again, showing the integration points. So basically, it's a totally integrated system. Okay, retail commerce. Again, it basically allows you to take and sell and integrate back and forth to Acumatica. And they currently, support BigCommerce and Shopify out of the box. There's some others out there for through third parties indirectly that are also supported. But the idea of it is it allows you to easily have your fulfillment and your sales from the web all really well integrated. Okay, and that sounds like a minor detail, but can be really important if that's part of your business plan. All right, and again, integrated. Okay, so B2B, business to business connected businesses. Okay, so there's kind of multiple ways to do this. So in this case here, you take a look, these pieces are all integrated tightly. All right, there's also other add-ons that might help in some cases if you're doing B2B for EDI and things like that. That's, a lot of ways to do that. Okay, and there's ways you can actually send information to customers and vendors and things like that without necessarily using EDI and things like that, like historical standards. There's a lot of options for business intelligence and analysis, okay, analytics. So if you take a look here, we're looking at just a handful of the products that are available. There are more than this, okay? So, keep in mind that there are a lot of products available to integrate well with Acumatica. Part of that's the design of the technology and how it's used, okay? Go a bit further, we have compliance. It's SOC type 1 and 2. PCI compliance level 1. So, those can be important factors if you're dealing with, credit card processing or you're a public entity. Those actually do help significantly, okay? And it's kind of important. Ethical business practices, okay? And this is something I was talking about before, and this is kind of the customer bill of rights from Acumatica. All right, so I think there's a couple key ones in here that are really important. One is sustainable pricing. Okay, they guarantee they're not going to actually increase the pricing more than 3% in any given year. That doesn't sound like a big deal unless you've just gotten a 50% increase from a software vendor. And we've all seen that happen. Really, some of us have anyway. We'll put it that way. That 3% piece is unbelievable, to be honest. In some cases, that they put it in writing. Okay, especially right now. This has been in writing now since I've dealt with Acumatica. And one of the keys to that is, look at the inflation rates right now. And they're still, still keeping the 3%. That's what they committed to. All right. Deployment flexibility is the other. If you're in an industry that requires, you basically have to host the system internally, okay, or on specific servers, that can be done. The system isn't strictly cloud-based, although it's basically a web custom, web item, and a vast majority of Acumatica is done through the cloud, through Acumatica. But there are other options if you're in an industry that has that requirement. All right. The other one that's really important is the ownership and control of their data. Okay. And what's important about that? We would love to say, hey, people use Acumatica forever. And then that's not a problem, right? Because the data is in the system. But there are times where, say, you go through you're in a company, you get bought out, et cetera, and the answer comes down to, hey, you know what? We're going to another product because, corporate uses SAP, we're being folded in. What's important about that? A lot of products in the cloud say, hey, you know what? You can have your data electronic. We'll put quotes around that. And what they do is they dump out a bunch of text files. And that sounds okay until you have to make use of the text files. Okay, I need to look up a transaction from 2 years ago. Where do I do it? Okay, well, historically, a lot of times what would happen is if you were running a premise-based system like Dynamics GP, you would actually just keep the old server running for a period of time for reference. Well, in a cloud environment, unless you want to continue to pay the vendor for that, that doesn't happen. So what's important about that is, since it's your data and Acumatica can be installed locally, you could actually take a snapshot, download that, install it locally, restore that, and you can actually see Acumatica in a trial mode and not have to continue to pay Acumatica. Okay, there's other pieces of that. The other part, maybe you want the database from Acumatica. Okay, they have provisioned so that you can actually get a copy of the database that you're using. Okay, so there are different things in there that are very important, and it is actually your data versus, hey, it's our data and we'll give you what what we said we would. We're going to do electronic download, but having a bunch of exported files isn't the same as being able to see it in the product still. Okay. Consistent 24/7 service. Basically, the core services are typically during business hours in your time zone and or in region. But that being said, you have an emergency. It's nice to know that there's 24/7 support. All right, so those are all pieces that kind of happen, and that becomes important. So those are the important parts of the customer bill of rights. Now, some nice add-ons here, like for example, flexible open platform for integrations. Yes, the technical part, but they're committed to making sure that still occurs in the future. They're not trying to make it where it becomes a system where things have to go through them for every little increase of integration and things like that might happen. All right. So, keep in mind, there are pieces of this, and it's rare that you see this kind of commitment from a software company. All right. Secondarily, the other thing that makes it kind of interesting is that there are systems here where what you're paying for is a per user basis in some cases, right? So if you go to, Microsoft or, NetSuite or some others, what happens is they charge you for every user that's needed, by named user. So if the person needs to go in and do one small entry or one lookup per ways, they're going to make sure they ding you for that particular user. Acumatica is not licensed per user. So if you need 5 users, you need 10 users, you need 50 users, you need 100 users, that's not how you're being charged. Okay, how you are being charged is based upon the consumption of what you use. And that sounds confusing, but it's actually really simple. So what they're trying to make sure of is that you get the performance that you need. If you only do 100 transactions a month, you don't need the performance level of somebody who's doing 1 million transactions per month. So basically, they're kind of just trying to scale the performance of the system for you is what it really comes down to. The way they do that is they determine what your highest level of commercial transactions are. And it's not hard to decipher. It's fairly straightforward. I know it sounds confusing right now, but it's not. And what's important about that is that a lot of times you'll have a transaction volume doesn't really change too much, but maybe you want to have additional people in for approvals. For example, our Dynamics GP clients, sometimes they only had 10, 20 users of accounting users. Okay, and the ones that are switching over from Dynamics GP over to Acumatica, one of the things that's happening is that because we have a much more robust workflow and approval processes built in Acumatica, many times you want more people involved with the system. Hey, who approves this expense report, or who approves this purchase order, or who approves these payments to be able to go out the door? And they might only need to get them once a month, once a year, 3 times a month, whatever. But the idea of it is you're not paying for those additional users to be able to do that. What that entails then is allows you to make sure you have a natural workflow, for example. A lot of times what happens in the ones where, hey, you know what, he only needs to do 1 approval a month, but I don't want to pay $300 a month for him to do that 1 approval. So what do? You come up with a workaround where, Bob will approve Sally's, expenditure because, we don't want to pay for that extra license. So the next thing you know, your workflow becomes kind of bastardized for your use. It's not really what you need. With Acumatica, you wouldn't worry about that. You just have them come in, set up the user for that approval, give them the access rights that he requires for that, and away you go. So the idea of it is, it makes it very simple, removes issues far as, worrying about what clients are going to pay. And to be honest, the $300 a month doesn't sound bad until you realize, hey, that's, that's $3,600, $4,000 a year, right? So that's kind of the difference in how that kind of plays out. So it works out very well. We haven't had any issues with that, and people actually use it, and they get more people involved with the system because that's what is more needed. Okay, we talked a little bit about data ownership before, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. These are just a sampling of some of the customers you may or may not have heard of from Acumatica. They have quite a few customers out there. So the idea of it is we're approaching the 10,000 mark, but the idea of it is you get kind of the idea. All right, so let's talk about the demo. So we'll kind of show you what it actually looks like. So what does that all pertain to, and what's it look like in practice? So I'm just going to open my browser up, okay? And I'm going to log out so you get an idea what it looks out. I am in a demo company in a demo environment, so I'm not as worried about security as you might be in the real world. And so I don't have second layer authentication here, so I'm just using single layer, okay, because on my internal server. Oops, it still requires me to type the password right though. And hopefully I did it the second time. There we go. So what typically happens when people get into the system, you end up with a scenario where it comes up with a dashboard. And that dashboard is typically designed for them or for a group of individuals. And there can be a different, you can have as many dashboards as you want. You know, people can access other dashboards, but the idea is typically people have kind of a home when they come to as they get into the system. All right, and I'm just going to expand the menu on the left-hand side because I know it's a little bit small to see. You can see here, here's kind of all the different modules that are, you know, that I have access to and are commonly used. So from here, one of the nice parts about it is the, like for example, if I look at orders to ship and I click on that, it actually shows me that information. Here are the orders that are ready to ship. Notice I'm in a demo that's old. So you'll notice here, they're all late. Okay, meaning that these all should have been shipped long ago. All right, and one of them's in the process of being shipped. I hope they actually got their order at this point. But the idea of it is it allows you to do that. Additionally, I can actually drill down on the orders from there. So I can actually go from the dashboard all the way back to the originating transactions very easily in the system. Okay, so the idea of it is it's information kind of at your fingertips as you need it. All right, so the thought process here, I don't know what's going on with my workstation here, but the idea of it is it gives you kind of that ability to go from all the way back to that summary data, all the way back to the detail. So in this case here, I'm looking at the sales order. I can see what's going on with it. Hopefully, there we go. So I can go down through here, what's on the order. I can see kind of what the availability is. I can go through the whole detail on this line item, what's going on, as well as through the whole order. Additionally, you notice up here, I can put notes. I can have 32 pages of notes. This is virtually on every window. Okay, so hopefully 32 pages of notes is enough. Notice now I have a little note written here. I can also have notes on the line item. Okay, again, up to 32 pages worth of notes. Additionally, I can have files. So I can attach a document to it. So if I actually go to the document, oops, hang on. I accidentally closed something here, so I got to open it back up. Give me a second. In my Windows File Explorer. So if I go to, I got to remember where I put everything. So if I want to attach the supporting documentation for this, okay, I can just literally drag and drop it on here. So if I click here and I drag it on, it'll just copy it. And at this point, that's attached. If I want to view it, I can click on it. And usually for a sales order, it'd be some kind of purchase order PDF, or it could be a spreadsheet, okay? And if I click on it, it'll then allow me to open the document. So the idea allows me to, actually, let me go back here. I don't need to save this one in particular. So the idea is, depending how your browser's set, it'll open it up. All right, so in my case, I have my browser set to automatically open it. I'm using Vivaldi, so it's a little bit different than what you might be using. If you're using Chrome, you might have a pop-up. It might pop up in the bottom left. You have to click on it, depending how you set up your browser to some extent. Notice that I have multiple windows open at the same time, okay? This is true throughout the system. I can break this out and then actually put this into a new window, and this is dependent upon your browser. So I can move the tab in this case to a new window, so I can actually have side-by-side comparisons of information. So if I want to copy something or I want to set it side by side, I can do that. Okay, so it's very easy to work with. So if I want to have two vendors side by side to make sure I duplicate the setting, one way to do it is to have it on the two screens. Okay, another way though is I'm going to close this sales order. I'm going to reopen it. So in this case here, suppose I had this order happen again, or I want to take a vendor and copy the vendor. Okay, one of the nice things about the system is I can actually go up here and do a copy. Okay, I'm going to click on it. Takes a second, and then I'm going to hit the plus to add a new one. I should probably actually put this in the cloud so it would be faster. So I hit the plus here. Okay, I can actually then paste it. So if I do here and click paste, it's going to paste the whole order in. All right. Now the difference is the status might be different. So for example, on the other one, it was open. This one might be coming on hold depending on how I have the system set up, those types of things. So that'll happen. But you know what? I want to change the date. So I'm going to make it today. Okay, pretty straightforward. I'm going to update the requested ship dates based upon that. I'm going to go a little bit further and say, yep, I want to ship by, I'm going to put today, I'm going to go and put it out. Maybe I want to ship it by October 5th. Those are the kind of things I can update, and that'll update the line items. If perhaps I can have a recalculated pricing if I want, maybe I add price changes since I copied the order, or maybe, you know what, I just don't like this guy, I don't want to charge it more, okay? I can do that very easily, okay? So the idea is you can take a document, copy it, change it, do what you need to do with it, save it, and it assigns a new order number to it, and away you go. Maybe a new customer PO number, etc. So it's a little bit different than what we historically become accustomed to in a lot of cases for a lot of different ERPs. Additionally, if I look at this and say, you know what, I never use substitutes, okay? I can actually drag that to the end so it doesn't show. I can reorder this. I don't know if you notice here, I moved it over to here. On the other hand, if I never do substitutes, I can actually take and go over here to this little column configuration item, and I can go down and see where the substitute is. I can actually take it out of there, click OK, and it's not on the menu at all, okay, or on the window. So I can easily change these around, adjust it as necessary, update it, etc. as I go through, and then very easily put it back. So in this case here, it's like, you know what, I actually need substitutes. I can actually put substitutes back so that I can actually do that. And I click OK on that, and it puts it back onto the menu. Okay. So I actually probably added it to the end, which I did, and then I can just drag it back to where I want, where I could have placed it before if I was paying attention. All right. Keep in mind that this is user specific, okay, for the most part. So it becomes a scenario where if this is how I work, this is what I do, maybe I only do certain types of sales orders compared to other people in the organization, then I can actually narrow this down to work more efficiently for me. By the same token, up here at the menus, it's the same thing. Maybe I never print sales orders. Well, you know what? Printing sales orders is on here as a favorite. I can actually take it off. I don't email them either because I just do entry. Those here, it's not on my menu. It's available still in the dropdown, and I can add it back anytime I want, but the idea is I can control it. Okay, and again, that's user by user. So those are the kind of pieces. Additionally, you may have the ability to add new orders, you may not, okay? It could be a scenario where you can just view them. You might have the ability not to delete orders, okay? So once you enter them, they're there, and somebody else has to have that ability. You can control what level of security anybody has for any particular document or even to the window itself. So that's kind of going through real quick to give kind of an idea how that drill down might work. At this point, I'm gonna close that. Now, the other part is, it's here, if I go down through, I can look down here, we have a different type of graph. Well, in this case here, you know what, others kind of goofing up my view here of what the item's purchase is. If I click on that, on the legend, okay, notice over here, if I take out is empty, by clicking on it, then we have others come up, hang on, let's get rid of that. And if I go down to other and take that out, you notice now my graph is kind of more normalized. And again, I did that on the fly. I didn't have to redesign it. I could, maybe I never want to include other, I can take it out entirely. And again, these have drill downs on them. So if I click on this, it's going to show me the drill down for the sales orders that have that particular item on it. So in the case here, you'll see these are all the Acer computer, and I can actually, again, drill down on the order anytime I want to see what the information is. Okay, just like I did before. So if I click on here, well, this is a credit memo, it's a bad one to click on. This is one where we're getting back, unfortunately. But the idea is I can actually see that. And if I take a look at the item, you notice here there's an attachment. And I don't know if it's a pertinent attachment or not. We're going to see in a second. If I click on files, oh, I thought there was an attachment on there. Maybe not. Thought I saw that. Huh. Let me click on this. There is. Oh, yeah, it's not pertinent though. It's a case study. So anyway, but you get kind of the idea. So I don't have to necessarily open it to see the note or the attachment. So I can very easily see it, drill down it, take a look at it, et cetera, as we go through. On this particular item, you notice we have on here different types of widgets. Okay, so these are KPIs. We have different types of graphs. We have listings, again, more graphs, etc. These are all widgets that are easily modifiable and adjusted. Okay, and depending what rights you give, they can be locked down, or you can give the end user the capability to modify basically their own dashboard or their dashboards. In this case here, we also have a scenario where we can actually look up and see this dashboard for a specific customer. So if I pick AA customer, and it's going to recalculate the dashboard for me that shows it for just this customer. So if I click on orders to ship or late orders, I can see it for a particular customer in this case. All right, so that's useful sometimes depending upon the entity, but you can see here, this is one of those where, yep, we take a look at it, and orders to ship, here's the one we just entered. We got 2 late orders, we have to take a look at it. All right, but the difference is if I take a look at this, it's all for the whole thing. So if we take a look here, this is the orders to ship again. If we take a look down here, notice the graph actually updated for that as well. If I take that back out, recalculates the whole dashboard. Okay, out of the box, just to give you kind of an idea, there's a whole series of dashboards that are included depending upon what you have requirements for, and again, depending on what you have rights for. So there could be situations where you don't have rights to a dashboard, to the whole dashboard, parts of the dashboard, that could all occur as well. So it's controlled kind of at the top. So to give you an idea how the menus work, okay, we're going to go back a little bit here, and you can see here we can do global searches, and I can search on JK Test, for example. There's no menu items for that. Do I have any transactions? Okay, yep, I have some sales orders that pertain to that and a GL transaction. Okay, so if I click on this, it'll actually take me to that, so I can actually trace and do global searches from within Acumatica. Think of it as the Google within Acumatica, and that's kind of what that comes down to. Notice my customer ID is, or my customer order number, customer PO number is JK Test in this case. Okay, so if a customer calls up, you're in the middle of something else, you can very easily look it up quickly and easily without jumping out of what you're in. All right, so it's got a lot of capability that way. We have, basically, we can see the history. Okay, here are the things I just did. Here are the things I just did today, okay, as we went through. But I can also look and say, okay, what were the last AP documents I went through? Sometimes that's useful. What was I working on 2 hours ago? Let me come back to it. All right, very important. All right, if I come up here, you can see here different breakdowns. This is just a sample of how you could break down your organization, between, companies and divisions and things like that as you go through. Date and time, pretty straightforward. Help menu, kind of important. Sounds minor, but very useful. Okay, so in this case here, what you're seeing is I'm on the sales order window. You can see here all the different types of things that they have in here, different types of transactions and things like that. We have related information about how to do certain things, and last but not least, we have the form reference. Okay, and that sounds like a minor detail, but you know what? If you're trying to, let's say, hey, how are we going to use that, or what does that mean? Somebody can actually look it up. Okay, and the help menu, the help actually matches the product version you're on. So you don't see things that don't pertain. Okay, meaning that, hey, I have a new field, and hey, the help doesn't match that. That becomes important. All right, so you can see here, if I click on any one of these, I can click on it and say, okay, delivery section. You can see here, it'll tell me field by field kind of what that pertains to, what I need to pay attention to. All right, additionally, okay, if I click on help, I'm going to do that again. You have the educational resources, and there's multiple parts to that. So you have down here, this is basically the documentation for the whole system, everything from, dashboard diagrams and how it works, to actual end user help, to implementation help, okay, schema providers, administration help, and then last but not least, developer help. Additionally, there's help online as well, that various videos, snippets, some longer, as well as actual classes. And then typically we help companies implement the system and walk them through that. So not only through the setup and all, but also through the training process to go through it and go through that. So it's kind of some of the services we offer as well. So kind of give you an idea that the system is got quite a bit of capability here. So we've kind of covered a lot of material. I haven't covered everything about Acumatica at this point. Today was meant to be kind of an introductory to Hudson River Computing and Acumatica. So this is kind of where we're at. So I'm going to leave it open for a moment to see if anybody has any questions. And hopefully I can see you guys in the part 2 of it all to see the next one. So I'm looking at either chat or Q&A. Where did it go? There it goes. Okay. All right, so we'll take a moment and we'll wait a moment and we'll see what happens. Okay. Okay, it doesn't look like we're getting any questions. So hopefully I've answered kind of at least the core topics we're trying to get to, which is who Hudson River Computing is and who Acumatica is. Okay, and a little bit of flavoring for what the product looks like. Now, again, we have a series 2 on this, that part 2, which will cover more detail about the product. We'll do a quick overview of kind of what we talked about today, down to a few slides, and then we'll go back to kind of the detail here. So I hope everybody has a great day. And as you have pleasant weather where you happen to be, I actually have very bright sunshine, and we'll kind of go on from there. So have a great day. Thank you very much for attending. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.